Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Bad news for Ukrainians in Kherson. It seems like the Russians are initiating a massive bombardment or shelling in Kherson, and I've seen a few articles already mentioning this massive attack of the Russian forces. Now this article that I'm going to use comes from the New Voice of Ukraine, so obviously they will minimize their ferocity, the attack's ferocity. So this article comes from December 10th, 2022. This is the title: Russians attack Kherson City, Oblast, Kherson City, Oblast 51 times within 24 hours, regional authorities say. 2 people were killed and 8 more were injured in another massive Russian shelling of the city of Kherson and the Oblast on December 9th. Yaroslav Yanushevich, head of Kherson Oblast Military Administration OVA, reported on Telegram on December 10th. He specified that the Russian invaders shelled the territory of Kherson Oblast 51 times. Well, the enemy used artillery, mortars, and multiple rocket launchers to attack towns and villages. Residential quarters of Kherson also suffered from enemy fire. Russian shells hit the territory of a factory, a medical facility, shops, cafes, warehouses, private and apartment buildings. Any military? No. Why? Because they're terrorists. They're all evil. All right, during December 8th, the Russians shelled Kherson Oblast 68 times with mortars, artillery, tanks, and MLRS. Kirilo Timoshenko, deputy head of the president's office, reported earlier. Now, from my previous or my experience with the reporting coming from the Ukrainians and verifying their information they provide, whenever they say, well, the Russians are using tanks, usually that's an offensive. It's not the tanks stay over there and they shoot. And they use it at Avdiivka and Mykolaiv, and they use it in Bakhmut, actually not Mykolaiv, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Novopavlivka, and Liman. This is where the offensive it's occurring right now, not usually. It's occurring right now. But and they use tanks. That's what the Ukrainians. On any other fronts, when you don't hear tanks, they don't say it's an how do you call it, offensive or anything like that. So here they mention tanks. So I'm thinking that maybe the Russians are trying an offensive, but they don't tell us yet. The attack resulted in a hit of a residential quarter, private and apartment buildings, and other buildings. So everything the Russians are just blowing up the town because they are mass murderers, criminals, and terrorists. That's how the story goes. And I'm pretty sure they do part of it. I don't know if they do it to the extent of this guy's is reporting. And I know the Ukrainians never, ever hit anybody but military personnel, because they are in strict, how do you call it, they're not violating any rules of law and the war rules of law. Okay, anyway, this is it. I'm waiting to see what's going on over there through other channels, but Kherson, they're getting at you 51 times yesterday, and then what was 68 times the day before. We'll see. Thank you very much for. I thought that the Russians are running out of missiles and rockets and mortars or something. That's what these weasels are telling us. We know how those things go, right? Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.